Okay, on paper it looked like a really good idea, but now it's looking a little bit weird. This week, on Weekly Roundup number 46, we have a couple of SBCs, a bit of gossip, and a lot of clowning around. First up on Kickstarter is the XAVNA. This is a vector network analyzer, which are normally fairly expensive, but this one is for around $200, almost halving the price of the Pocket VNA. Has a frequency range of 140 MHz to 3.5 GHz, with some decent dynamic ranges for the price. Runs off a 500 mAh 5V supply, with Windows, Linux and Mac OS supported. Now this is something to keep you awake at night. It's a DIY kit with a 4-axis servo frame, allowing you to create a reactive robot face, can track movement and stare at you ominously from the other side of the room. The original game Buino was launched 3 years ago. Well, now they're back with an updated version. Runs the Atmel SAMD21 Cortex M0 Plus with an 80 by 64 pixel RGB display, 900 mAh LiPo, multi-channel sound playback and SD card. They have made available all their GPIOs from the SAMD21 and have open sourced everything. Nice. This is a simple Kickstarter with not much info, but claims to be a superset of the Parallax basic stamp. No idea what the MCU is, but they mention it's an ARM based one. If Bruce is watching this video, then I suggest adding a lot more detail on this campaign. That would attract a lot more people. Seems that the latest war in the electronics maker market is making things as small as possible. Indiegogo has a campaign for the Atom X1, which they claim is the world's smallest board. Back in Weekly Roundup number 31, there was the Microduino, which came in at 12mm squared. Alas, this one is almost 15mm squared, so the claim is still with the Microduino. Sorry guys. However, it is the first smallest SAMD21 based board out there, and due to the size only, pushes out 9 of the 26 GPIOs that the SAMD21 is capable of. Over at Crowd Supply, there is yet another Michael Welling product in pre-launch called the BeagleWire. It's a BeagleBone cape with an onboard Lattice ICE 40HX FPGA, 32 megs RAM and 4 PMOD and 4 Grove ports. All schematics and software are fully open, which is nice to see, and there's a comprehensive wiki on it over at elinux.org. Over at GroupGets, they have the Pure Modules kit, which has been around for a while now. This is an NRF52 based board with 3 DOF IMU and temperature sensors. Runs off a coin cell battery and can be OTO programmed via the Arduino IDE. It also supports Wirepass and HomeKit. Nice to see. This C12666MA breakout board is currently on sale at the moment, which is a MEMS spectrometer. Good thing if you're into fluorescent spectroscopy, as that sort of test gear normally ends up costing a bucket load. Note, however, that this MEMS sensor is actually a product end of life. And if you're looking for a cheap ESP32S, then GroupGets has them for $1 each. What's the catch? You can only buy one at a time and shipping costs a lot. So for me it's pointless, as it would cost 5 times than getting it elsewhere. The Hackaday Anything Goes competition has finished with 20 winners announced, like the Beagle Logic Standalone, which can sample 16 channels at 100 megasamples per second, fully compatible with SIGROC and can stream over 1 gigabit Ethernet. Or this $4 4IC Z80 computer. Or the MappyDot with Atmega 328PB VL53LOX sensor in a tiny package. You interface to it over I2C, and an auto-addressing scheme allows you to connect up to 112 devices. And an 8-bit colour computer built from discrete logic ICs. He's even implemented a few 2 instructions per clock instruction set. If you're in Pasadena on the 11th and 12th of November, then you have to head over to the Hackaday Super Conference. 2 days of nerd talks. Nice. You can also pick up a really hackable SuperCon badge. Wonder if the burn marks will be present on all the badges. Back in Weekly Roundup number 45, we saw a bit of noise about Adafruit and Radio Shack. The word on the street is that it was just a bit of noise. However, they have recently filed a trademark claim for the word Radiofruit, and they already have products called that on their website. One of the fruit shop guys have come out with a new SBC. We now have the Banana Pi M2 Magic. For $23 you can get a quad-core Cortex A7 All-Winner A33 based board with 512 megs DDR3 RAM, optional 8 or 64 gigs eMMC, SD slot, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth using the AP6212, what else? MIPI CSI and DSI all on a 51mm squared PCB. This places it in direct competition with such boards as the Orange Pi R1 and Nano Pi Neo Plus. It's good to finally see some different product names appearing. The Cobalt MC is pretty expensive, but it's a board aimed at multimedia. It runs the 1GHz quad-core Cortex A9 NXP IMX6 with 1GB DDR2 RAM, SD slot, Gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and WeLink 8. It has a decent graphics engine on board that can handle a 2 4-lane MIPI CSI port. Olimex is back, this time with a new form factor board called the SOM204. This board is based on the All-Winner A20 with 1GB RAM, 64GB eMMC and Gigabit Ethernet. Their ultimate goal is to create SOM204 modules for the All-Winner A13, AM3352 and RK3188 SOCs. 6Fab has a 4GB LTE hat for the Pi based on the Quectel EC25E, which plugs in via a mini PCIe socket. You can order one of these for a little over $30. Even if you're not interested in the Quectel module, which you have to purchase separately, this board might be a cheap way of adding a PCIe interface to the Pi. These next ones are fairly expensive, but they get the job done. If you're into some serious IoT, then one of these will give you a PIC32 running RTOS or Linux, 4G module, GNSS, 100 megabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and an expansion header for NFC, RFID, Sigfox, LoRa and Iridium. This board is pretty serious stuff for serious developers. DEC Italia have released a DIN rail format IoT gateway with a Raspberry Pi CM3 socket. It breaks out most of the goodies from the Pi 3, but also has an XB expansion header, RTC and SHT21 sensor. Can be powered from USB or 24 volts DC. Another gumsticks, this one providing PoE over Gigabit Ethernet to a Pi CM3 socket. It also has a socket for the RHF0M301 LoRa module. Unilec have released a so-called open source router. Well, essentially every router is open source, even if the original manufacturer didn't intend it to be. This board runs OpenWRT on an MT7621 with up to 512 meg DDR3 RAM, SD slot, SATA 3.0, mini PCIe for the mSATA and an additional 2 mini PCIes for Wi-Fi modules, and 5 gigabit Ethernet ports. You can currently pick them up on AliExpress for around $40. If I say the word Dragon Wally, then you really have no idea what it is. Well, it's a board that makes it easier for you to implement stereoscopic vision. It's a 96 boards compliant PCB that's designed to fit onto a Dragon board and has two 5 megapixel cameras, accessible over MIPI DSI. Supports OpenCV out of the box, as well as the AWS Recognition API for facial recognition. The latest release of OpenBSD adds support for 2 new ARM cores, which are the All-Winner A64, All-Winner H5, and there's also the BCM3827 and RK3399 SOC. So you'll now be able to run OpenBSD on a couple of Orange Pi SBCs, Pi 64, Firefly RK3399, Nano Pi Neo 2 and also the Pi 3. This means that possibly a scaled down version of FreeNAS will be heading our way soon. Nice. There's lots of things over at Tindy this week. The Freematics ESP32 board comes in an Arduino form factor, but has an XB socket that you can stick a 3G SIM5360 module, and another to connect one of their OBD CAN transceivers. A 7-port USB hub in a tiny package. This comes from the same Tindy store that has 4 and 2-port hubs. This is a good idea, which allows you to quickly hack together a circuit without a breadboard. And this is a pretty cool board that will sense EMP caused by lightning. You can theoretically use it as a camera trigger so you can take some really cool photos. The MSP430 MCUs are fairly versatile and they're based on a RISC core. They also have a fairly similar lineup to the STM32 and AT-SAMs. This door has a couple of breakouts based on them. CNC machines come in several styles. One style is to use two motors on a single belt to control the X and Y axis. It's a cool idea, and the best way to control them is using the Gerbil Core XY firmware. This store has the firmware preloaded on an Arduino Zero for you. Oh look, the Prudak from Weekly Roundup number 45 is on Tindy now. And the FTDI hack is a breakout board for the FT231XQ IC, which is similar to the SparkFun version, but cheaper. There's quite a few DSOs around. Here's one you can build yourself based on a 50 MHz PIC32. Has all the usual good stuff like 1 MHz single channel oscilloscope, 4-channel logic analyzer, signal generator and frequency counter. Oh look, the track IMU in last week's roundup is on Tindy as well. Over at Seed Studio they have the Particle P1 Wi-Fi module running the BCM43362 IC and an STM32F205 with 1 MB flash, external 1 MB SPI flash and 25 GPIOs pushed out. This one has a breakaway antenna, or there's also the smaller Particle P0 module. This looks pretty cool. It's a DV Mega Pi hat with onboard VHF and UHF radios. Power output is 10 milliwatts, so not huge, but enough to transmit over the DMR Plus network. The BlueStack Micro Plus is another DV Mega board that supports DMR over Bluetooth or D-Star Fusion and DMR over USB. This one is designed specifically for the iOS platform, and there's also this one for the Android platform. Over at Adafruit they have a Featherwing with an onboard INA219 IC, which is a power monitor allowing you to measure up to 3.2 amps at 26 volts DC. You can change the current sense resistor to a lower value to increase that maximum to 32 amps. Over at SparkFun they have a spectral sensor. No, not a Spectre sensor, it's not Halloween yet. It's a spectrometer that will detect wavelengths from 450 to 650 nanometers in the visible spectrum, accessible over ITC and UART. They also have one that extends that range from 610 nanometers to 860 nanometers. Over at DF Robot there's the 328P Fire Beetle with onboard Bluetooth 4.1 module. It supports all the usual Fire Beetle add-ons and can draw only 70 microamps while in sleep mode. Back in Weekly Roundup number 34 we saw the Qual meter on Kickstarter. Well now DF Robot are selling all three models, the Advanced, Mini and also Basic. And LED panels are getting cheaper and cheaper. Unfortunately I missed out on the used 64x64 panels on eBay recently, and they were selling at a ridiculous price. Over at DigiKey they have some tiny power modules based on the TPS M842, giving you a 3.3, 5 or 12 volt output from a 24 volt input. Pretty handy. It's hard to think of a company such as TDK creating motion sensor development boards, but here's one on DigiKey. This one runs an Atmel SAM G55 MCU and an ICM 20948 9DOF IMU. And over in China we have a breakout for the fairly accurate MPL31115A2 temperature and pressure sensor. Runs off 3 to 5 volts and can drop down to 2 microamps in standby. Even at a 1 Hz sampling rate it only consumes around 9 microamps. And for only $1.38 a pop you can get an MP3 player with amplifier and SD slot. You'd actually never be able to make one of those cheaper. And here's a 3-channel low and high side current and voltage monitor running the INA3221 IC, which is accessible over ITC. Apparently you can pick up a tiny GSM module for only $8 US. This one runs the MTK6260M GSM module, and if you're lucky to be in a country with a running GSM network still, you'll be able to use it. Back in Weekly Roundup number 42 there was the ESP8285 on Seed Studio. Now Banggood have the ESP M3, which isn't quite as small as the Seed version, but pretty close. Remember the old 8051 CPUs? Well, here's a new take on an old CPU. This breakout has an updated 8051 CPU that will run code 20% faster than the previous incarnation of this chip. The board also has 6 GPIOs out. Over at DX they have a couple of e-ink displays. This one is a 7.5 inch 3-color 640 by 384 pixel display. And this one is a smaller 2.13 inch display at 212 by 104 resolution. So there we have it. Not much else to report on this week. Have fun over Halloween, and don't forget to be careful of the crazy guys in the clown suit. Thanks for watching. See you next week.